let's pivot to talking about your portfolio because you made a very big move. Because typically, what I've seen from you is like you'll do like a fairly large initial investment into a stock, and then after that, you'll just kind of like chip at it and like do like a little like increases every once in a while. But I think you did like a 43% increase in Rivian.
On Rivian. Yeah.
Yeah. What's
So
going on with that?
so actually, I've learned to kind of like build up my positions over time slowly because oftentimes the stock, when I get excited about it, is because it's probably dropped to some extent, and uh, and at least it's a really good price and it hasn't moved substantially. So I've learned in those kind of scenarios, the stock is likely to drop even more in the near term. So most of the time I'm buying slowly. And in Rivian's case, that has been true. I built up my Rivian position over the past couple of years, and it's basically been like flat to down most of that time. And I
And I
just
feel like
watched.
there are times there that you've kind of fallen out of love with it a little bit. Like,
Well, I've been frustrated at the. I've owned it for a couple of years. I was frustrated at the rate of progress on getting um, to positive margins on the vehicle. So before, when they were selling a vehicle, they were actually spending more on a per vehicle basis than the average sale price, and they have fixed that for the most part, assuming they can build the vehicles in enough volume, which they didn't do this last quarter. So there's been definitely some frustration there with Rivian. But one of the things that they have also been investing in for over a year is their AI and autonomy. And I watched an interview with RJ on Friday that Inside EV did with him. And the interview is packed with like great info, which if you're a Rivian stock owner, you should probably watch that video. It's about an hour and a half long. And it builds a lot of confidence in the company. By the viewer gets a lot of confidence in the company just listening to RJ talk about the various different elements, including the R2. But one of the things that I started to think about was his discussion about their AI and autonomy investment and how he fully expects them to have point to point hands off driving. And essentially, what point to point hands off driving is the equivalent of what Tesla full self driving has today. You still need eyes on the road, but you can have hands off the wheel. And
did they acquire a company to do this, or are they building this like from scratch?
I believe they're building it from scratch, and they have been at it for quite some time. So this is not something new. In fact, they in the latest iteration of their R1 vehicles, the second generation R1, not to be confused with the R2.
R
They
1.1.
Yeah, whatever. They put in these ECU these computers, self driving computers in them that are more powerful than Tesla hardware three computers. So at the time, Tesla hardware 3 was what was the latest, and these computers are roughly 1.5 times the power of the Tesla hardware 3 computers, and they use two NVIDIA chips for it. They have a lot of compute power on every vehicle, and they designed that circuitry and computer system themselves. So they've been working on this stuff for some time. And RJ kind of tends to be way less, uh, optimistic with his timelines than, let's say, Elon is. Yeah, it's tough to sort of like nail these timelines down. So I totally understand if they're going to be late or whatever, but it's not like, for he hasn't been promising it for 8 years and not delivering. He just basically started talking about uh point to point hands free driving uh just recently, relatively recently, and they're going to have an AI autonomy day in December. So my thinking process is that if they can convince and demonstrate that they are close to having point to point hands off driving, which is the equivalent of what full self driving on Teslas are today. And if they can have that within the next year, Rivian could get repriced as an AI autonomy company, right? And if they get repriced as an AI autonomy company, and there could be belief that they could even build their own robo taxis someday, not next year, but possibly 2, 3 years down the road, then all of a sudden you have Rivian being the potentially third player, a very viable player in this space. Waymo, Tesla, and Rivian. And if that happens in the investor mindset, investors either reward or punish, meaning like there's no sort of in between. If they start rewarding for in anticipation of this type of thing happening for Rivian, Rivian could get repriced to $100 billion company relatively quickly, right? That's a definite possibility.
And where's it at today? Do you know?
It's roughly a $16 billion company, right? So that's approximately a six-time increase if it hits 100. I mean,
Not
it could
investor
go.
advice.
That's right. um, so this is all speculations and opinions, and we have lots of them. And
Yeah. Just two friends talking casually.
That's right. That's right. But like, and 100 billion is not sort of some magical sort of number that it would necessarily stop at, because Waymo is estimated to be valued 2 to 300 billion. In my view, if Rivian could actually show that they are capable of autonomy, they should be worth way more than Waymo, because Waymo does not have the vehicle advantage, meaning they don't make their own vehicles. Their cost per vehicle is way too high. Rivian has taken the approach of similar to Tesla's, but they're also including LiDAR and radar on there.
That was going to be my next question. So Rivian does have LiDAR.
That's right. That's right. So they have five LiDAR and radar devices on the vehicles as well. So
What are your
he talks
personal
about that in
thoughts
the
on
video.
that? What are your thoughts on, like, do you think LiDAR is needed? Do you think there's benefit? Do you think it's better to not have it and keep it cheaper?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that, from a cost standpoint, I've been before they used to cost a lot. Like, I've been very negative on them. And then, when you take the V1 approach of building these self-driving capabilities, which was all rules based, there could be a lot of problems with that approach and having two different signals. Meaning, if the video cameras are telling you one thing, but then the LiDAR is telling you another thing. If you're taking the rules-based approach, then like what do you do?
Hmm.
And I think Elon is right about that, because he made the decision of dropping LiDAR when he was approaching self-driving and under the V1 approach, which was the rules-based approach. But with the V2 approach, it's a little bit different, meaning like you can feed all the data that you're getting, all the signals, the cameras, the video, the LiDAR, the radar, all of it into AI and say, this is how a good driver is driving based on all of these signals, right? And
Yeah.
that's how AI learns. So if you have more input to AI, all indications are that that's a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. So Elon might be wrong about that. And part of his resistance might be the fact that if he admits that, okay, LiDAR radar could be a good thing, then all of a sudden 100% of all of the existing Teslas that don't have that vehicle on those
Yeah.
vehicles are completely pointless, and they cannot even be used for data collection. So it's possible that it would put Tesla way behind on the data collection side of doing AI. So I could see why Elon is double downing on the camera only based approach, because A, he doesn't have LiDAR radar on his vehicles, and B, he's kind of like, we got to figure this out with video only, because that's how humans
Right.
drive. But technically speaking, the V2 approach is take all the sensory info, throw it at neural nets, and tell neural nets this is how a good driver drives with all this sensory info, and figure it out, right? And AI figures it out. And
I mean, it,
in that
it make
scenario, Rivian might actually be at an advantage.
it makes sense to me. It's how humans work, right? Like, we have our five senses. Like, either I see I'm about to walk into a wall, or like
That's
I
right.
kind of hear a difference of like the noises, and that kind of stops me or whatever. Or
Right.
or
That's
you feel it
exactly
and you
right.
kind of slow it down before you make real impact, right?
That's exactly
Um,
right. And they call that intuition, right? Like,
yes,
intuitively, you knew
yes,
something was wrong. And AI is really good at figuring out that intuition, essentially, when you give it enough data. So in the V2 approach, so to be clear, my position was very much in line with Elon's, in that, like,
yeah,
hey, you can't have two sensors telling you to do two different things in the rules based approach, right? So I was 100% on board with Elon's way, but now I'm like, more data is not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to AI approach. So this is a little bit different.
And what about your experience with FSD with your Tesla? Like, have you experienced like heavy rain or low lighting conditions where the cameras aren't working, or has it been
Yeah.
pretty seamless?
No, in those scenarios, you do have to sort of take charge. I mean, it's actually surprising how well it works, even in rain or light rain, I should say. But there are times when you do have to take over, and it still makes mistakes. That like every now and then, it'll make a left turn from the second lane into the first lane, and fortunately, it only makes those mistakes when there's no cars there. But then you're like, wait, why is it making such a basic mistake? And on like certain turns, it does it every single time. So
Well, the
there's
concern there is if they actually do robo taxis where no one's behind the wheel, is that viable? Right.
Well, a lot of these mistakes. So, for example, if there's no car there and it's like crossing the lanes or whatever, like, is it a big deal, right? Like, it's probably not going to get into a bad accident just because of those little mistakes. But it is surprising that it makes those mistakes in the first place. I'm not sure LiDAR would prevent that anyway, because LiDAR is not necessarily like lane detection is a very good visual thing from a
Yes.
technology standpoint. So,
Right. You need
um,
the cameras for that. I don't think LiDAR
would
would
help
work.
in that
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah. But yeah, so like they just have probably more training work and just regular incremental update work to do to get to full blown robo taxis. But they're there. They're like serving robo taxis in various different areas. So I suspect that version that they're using is ahead of the version that I'm using in my car. But it is impressive. What Tesla has done is unequivocally incredibly impressive. And if Rivian is second or third behind them, then Rivian cannot be a $16 billion company. That's just not, just it just does not make any sense, right? So that's what I got excited about over the weekend, and why I increased my position by 43%.
It's funny to hear you speak so positively on Tesla because I saw you posted your Rivian thoughts on X or Twitter,
That's
and
right.
it got like over 100,000 views. A lot of people commented. And, for somehow, some way, Twitter makes things seem very black and white.
That's
And
right.
a lot of people did
Think
not
that I'm an
agree
idiot.
with your
Like I don't.
perspective. Yes.
Yeah, and almost 100% of those people are Tesla fans, or they're anti both Tesla and like EVs and Rivian, and like they think self-driving will never be a thing. So there's only those like two groups that are negative on my post. And what's funny is that I'm extremely bullish and or I've been an extreme fan of Tesla for the past, 10 years roughly.
And Tesla
When I
owner.
pre-ordered my Model X, and I've like had owned three different Model X's. Currently own a Cybertruck, so I'm a huge Tesla fan. I think Tesla is going to be the world's largest company. In fact, I predicted that many years ago. Like I created a video about it, which I had to sort of post. Recently, just to say like, listen guys, I get that Tesla is ahead of Rivian and is almost figured this thing out, and is going to be number one. And I think, by the way, the reason I sold my Uber shares is because I think Tesla is going to destroy Uber over time as well. But when you look at the sort of opportunity here of robo taxis, I think some of that is a little bit overestimated. um, but uh, but it's not going to happen overnight. And like when you look at all of uh, Uber's revenue is like roughly Uber's pulling in, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 120, 130 billion dollars of gross revenue from the millions and millions of vehicles around the world that they have with drivers in them. In Basically, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So what's the sort of potential revenue opportunity for robo taxis? It's not like going to be significantly greater than that, and it's certainly not going to get there overnight. And despite having all of that revenue, if you sort of replace all of that revenue with robo taxis at, let's say, half the price, because you can't charge just as much. Otherwise, like people might choose driver based cars as opposed to the robo taxis. Just part of the advantage is to make them cheaper and safer. Then like how much is that worth? And that's going to take a good 10 years before we get there, right? So in the next couple of years, how much revenue is Tesla going to have from robo taxis? At the most, it's going to be single digit billions. Maybe 1 billion, 2 billion, even 5 billion would be incredibly impressive. But 5 billion added to Tesla's revenue of $100 billion is only 5% increase. Even if they have $10 billion of revenue from it in the next 3 years, 4 years, that's only a 10% increase. So the movement for Tesla's revenues and profits is relatively small. Now, uh, if Rivian just simply gets considered as a potential player in this space, it could move in a substantial way. So from an investment standpoint, that's how I'm looking at it. That yes, Tesla is number one. I don't argue about that. There's no question in my mind that they're number one or will be. Waymo is
Right.
technically number one right now, but I think Tesla is going to overtake them. Um, but what is the number two and number three worth? And if Tesla's value of $1 trillion value is like $400 billion of that is based on robotaxis alone, then number three shouldn't be worth 16 billion, right? That's the way I'm looking at it.
Right. The risk is Tesla, I'm fairly confident they'll be around in 10 years. There's a chance Rivian isn't.
Won't be. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That is 100. So like you're right in that the downside risk for Rivian is you lose 100% of the money. But the upside risk is that, or the upside reward is that you might get 5 or 10 times returns on the money. Um, yeah. So, what's the probability of one versus the other is a big question. And these are
That's
the
what you have to
unknowns,
figure out.
obviously. These are
Yeah.
the things we speculate on.